Welcome to the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nasu. Today we're jumping into a deep dive on habits. You know, those invisible routines that pretty much run our lives, personally and professionally.
Absolutely, they're powerful forces.
Our guide for this is The Power of Habit, the secret to mastering habits for business excellence 1 Hour Guide. And our mission today is really to unpack how habits work and, crucially, how you can actually harness that knowledge.
Make it practical.
Exactly. We want this to be engaging, give you those aha moments, but, without feeling like you're drowning in theory. Sound good?
Sounds great. Let's dive in.
Okay, so chapter 1. It all starts with understanding the core mechanism, right? The habit loop.
That's the foundation. Yeah. It's like the shortcut the brain creates. Cue, routine, reward.
Right. Let's break those down. First up, the cue. What exactly is that?
The cue is basically the trigger. It tells your brain, okay, time to run this program. It could be anything, really.
Like,
a specific time of day, maybe a place you're in, an emotion you feel, even just the action that came right before it.
so seeing your running shoes by the door could be a cue.
Perfect example. Or, feeling that 3 p.m. slump at work. That's a common one.
Okay, so the cue fires the starting gun. Then comes the routine.
Yep, the routine is the habit itself, the action. It can be physical, like grabbing that coffee.
Or mental, like automatically checking your phone.
Exactly. Or even emotional, like getting defensive when you feel criticized. That's a routine too.
And the payoff for doing the routine is the reward.
Precisely. The reward is what tells your brain, hey, this loop, it's worth remembering. Do it again.
So it could be the sugar rush from a snack.
Or the stress relief, or just escaping boredom for a minute on social media. That positive feeling reinforces the whole cycle.
Cue, routine, reward, and the more you do it.
The stronger that connection gets. It
Yeah.
becomes almost automatic, yeah. Less conscious thought involved.
The guide gives that afternoon snack example. Fatigue is the cue, getting the sugary treat is the routine, and the reward is that quick burst of energy. You can see how that gets locked in.
Totally. And the positive flip side, like the exercise habit. Alarm goes off, cue, you work out, routine, you feel great afterwards. Those endorphins kick in. Reward. Same loop, different outcome.
It's kind of eye-opening, realizing how much runs on this loop.
It really is. And just becoming aware of it for your own habits is step one.
The guide mentions Febreze, too. That wasn't an instant hit, was it? What went wrong initially?
No, it stumbled at first. P&G marketed it purely as an odor eliminator.
Okay.
But the problem was, eliminating an odor isn't really a tangible reward in the context of cleaning habits. People clean, they want to see clean, smell clean. Just making a bad smell disappear wasn't enough of a payoff. There was no strong reward signal.
Ah, I see. So how did they fix it?
They got clever. They kept the cue finishing up your cleaning routine, but they changed how they framed the reward.
How so?
They added a pleasant scent to Febreze. So the routine became spraying Febreze at the end of cleaning, and the reward became that satisfying fresh scent, that signal of, clean.
So they manufactured a reward that fit the existing habit loop.
Exactly. They tapped into that craving for a sensory signal of completion and cleanliness. Genius, really.
That's fascinating. So for you listening, a good first step is maybe picking one habit, good or bad, and just trying to identify its cue, routine, and reward.
Absolutely. Just mapping it out can be incredibly insightful.
Which brings us nicely to chapter 2 and the craving brain. It's not just the reward, it's the wanting of the reward, right?
That's the key insight. Cravings are what actually power the habit loop. Your brain starts to anticipate that reward as soon as the cue appears. It's that anticipation, that craving, that drives you to do the routine.
So understanding cravings is crucial if we want to build new habits.
Essential. If you want to create a new habit, you need to cultivate a craving for the reward associated with it.
Okay, how do we do that? What are the steps?
Well, first, pick a really obvious cue. Make it unmissable.
Like putting your workout clothes out the night before.
Perfect. Second, define the routine. What exactly are you going to do? Be specific.
5 minutes of meditation, maybe?
Okay. Then third, and this is critical, make sure the reward is something you actually genuinely crave. What feeling are you really after?
So for the meditation example, maybe the reward is feeling less stressed, more calm.
Exactly. And when you do the routine, meditate, you need to consciously focus on that feeling of calm afterwards.
Yeah.
Really savor it. Over time, your brain links the cue, waking up, seeing the clothes, with that anticipated feeling of calm, and you start to crave it. That's what makes the habit stick.
So it's about engineering that craving.
Pretty much. You're teaching your brain what to look forward to.
The book mentions a rat experiment that sounds intense.
Yeah.
About pleasure centers.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
That study is quite revealing. They implanted electrodes in rats' brains in the pleasure center.
Soy.
And the rats could press a lever to get a jolt of pleasure directly to the brain.
Oh, wow. What happened?
They basically couldn't stop pressing the lever. They ignored everything else. Food, water, sleep, just kept pressing it. It shows how incredibly powerful the drive for reward is, how it can completely hijack behavior.
A bit scary, but it illustrates the point about cravings driving habits.
Definitely. So for you listening, when building a new habit, really think about that reward. What deep down craving will it satisfy? Is it accomplishment, relaxation, connection? Nail that down and link it strongly to your routine.
That's really practical advice. Okay, so we know how habits form, how cravings fuel them. What about changing habits we don't want? Chapter 3 talks about a golden rule.
Yes, the golden rule of habit change. It's a really powerful framework.
So what is it?
It's deceptively simple. Keep the old cue, keep the same reward, but change the routine.
Keep the trigger, keep the payoff, just swap the action.
Exactly. You're basically hijacking the existing loop. The cue still happens, your brain still anticipates that reward, but you consciously insert a different behavior to get there.
Why does that work better than just trying to, ignore the cue or resist the craving?
Because cues and rewards are often really deeply embedded. Trying to eliminate them entirely often leads to a willpower battle you might lose. Focusing on the routine is often the path of least resistance. It's more manageable.
Can you give an example? Say, someone bites their nails when they're anxious.
Okay, good one. So the cue is feeling anxious. The reward might be a brief distraction or a sense of, ironically, relief. Using the golden rule, when you feel anxious, cue, instead of biting your nails, old routine, you could say, squeeze a stress ball, or take 3 deep breaths, new routine, aiming for that same feeling of brief relief or distraction reward.
Finding a substitute routine that delivers a similar reward.
Precisely. Or the smoking example, cue is stress, reward is stress relief. The new routine could be a quick walk, chewing gum, calling a friend, anything that provides a similar feeling of de-stressing.
And the guide mentions using this for building good habits too, like exercise.
Right. Maybe your cue is getting home from work, and the reward you seek is unwinding. Your current routine might be collapsing on the couch with TV.
Sounds familiar.
Using the golden rule, cue, getting home, and reward, unwinding, stay the same. You just change the routine to, say, a 20-minute workout before you hit the couch. You still get to unwind, but you've inserted a healthier routine.
The Alcoholics Anonymous case study seems like a prime example of this rule in action.
Absolutely. AA is incredibly effective, partly because it nails this. The cue might be stress, loneliness, or a specific time of day associated with drinking. The reward people crave is often connection, support, coping mechanisms.
Okay.
AA provides a new routine, going to meetings, talking with a sponsor, engaging with the community. This new routine delivers those same crucial reward, support, coping, belonging, just without the alcohol.
It's about replacing the destructive routine with a constructive one that meets the same underlying need.
Exactly. So for you listening, if there's a habit you want to change, first, pinpoint the cue. Then really dig into what reward you're actually getting from it. What craving is it satisfying? Then brainstorm alternative routines that could give you a similar reward.
That feels much more achievable than just saying, stop doing that.
It's about working with your brain's wiring, not against it.
Okay, let's move on. Chapter 4 introduces keystone habits. These sound important.
They really are. Keystone habits are sort of foundational habits. They're habits that, when you change or adopt them, trigger a cascade of other positive changes seemingly automatically.
Like a domino effect?
Exactly like a domino effect. They create ripples.
What makes a habit a keystone habit? Are there specific characteristics?
Yeah. The guide points out a few things. First, they often create small wins, early successes that build momentum and belief.
Okay.
Second, they spark positive feedback loops. The benefits spill over, making other good habits easier. And third, especially in organizations, they can drive real culture shifts.
Can you give an example for an individual?
Exercise is a classic one. Start small, maybe just a daily walk. That's a small win.
Right.
Then you might notice you have more energy, positive feedback, which makes you maybe eat a bit better, sleep better, be more productive. It snowballs.
And the guide even mentions making your bed. That seems so small.
It does, but think about it. You start the day with an accomplishment, small win. It can create a sense of order that ripples through your day, maybe making you tidier or more organized in general. It sets a tone.
Interesting. And the big case study here is Paul O'Neill at Alcoa, the aluminum company.
Yeah.
He focused on
So
Safety.
when he took over as CEO, everyone expected him to talk profits. Instead, he relentlessly focused on worker safety. His goal was zero injuries.
Seems like an odd focus for a CEO initially.
It seemed odd to Wall Street, too. But safety became the keystone habit. Focusing on it led to analyzing the manufacturing process deeply, which improved efficiency. It required better communication across departments.
So the focus on safety forced other positive changes.
Exactly. Reduced injuries were the small wins. Improved communication processes created positive feedback. And it fundamentally shifted Alcoa's culture, leading to, yes, record profits eventually. It all stemmed from that one focus.
Incredible. So for our listener, the question is, what small change could you make that might have knock-on effects?
Right. What single habit, if you nailed it, would make other good things fall into place more easily? Could be tracking your spending, planning your day, that morning walk. Look for those leverage points.
Great takeaway. Now, shifting gears slightly, Chapter 5 looks at how a business, Starbucks, intentionally built success using habit principles. This is from The Power of Habit, The Secret to Mastering Habits for Business Excellence 1-Hour Guide.
Yeah, Starbucks is a fascinating case study in organizational habit building. They didn't leave consistency to chance.
They really engineered the habits of their employees.
Very much so. They use the habit loop everywhere. Think about the morning store opening. Cue. Arriving for shift. Routine. A very specific checklist of cleaning, prepping, stocking. Reward. A smoothly running store, ready for the rush, sense of preparedness.
Reduces errors, ensures consistency across stores.
Exactly. And their training was huge for this. It wasn't just about making coffee.
What else did it cover?
A lot on soft skills, like handling difficult customers. They had routines for that, too. Cue. Irate customer. Routine. Specific de-escalation steps. Listening techniques, like the a latte method. Reward. Resolve situation. Feeling competent, positive customer outcome.
So they trained the desired response into a habit.
Precisely. They drilled these routines so they became automatic, especially under pressure.
The guide mentions an employee, Travis. How did he fit in?
Travis initially struggled, apparently, but by diligently learning and applying these Starbucks routines, these habits, he transformed into a really successful manager. It shows how these structures can help people develop skills and confidence.
So the goal was embedding excellence as a habit at every level.
From barista to leadership, yes. Consistency and quality weren't just goals, they were ingrained routines.
For you listening, especially if you're in a management or team role, think about your workplace. Where could clearer, more consistent routines, habits improve things? Efficiency, customer service, teamwork.
Where can you intentionally design the cues, routines, and rewards for better outcomes? Good question to ponder.
Definitely. Okay, Chapter 6 throws a different element into the mix. Crisis. How can crises actually shape habits?
Yeah, the power of a crisis. It argues that big disruptions can be potent moments for habit change, sometimes forcing it, sometimes enabling leaders to intentionally guide it.
Because the old routines get broken.
Exactly. The status quo is shattered, people are more open, maybe even forced to find new ways of doing things. New habits can form in that vacuum.
And this can happen by accident or by design.
Right. Sometimes new habits just emerge out of necessity during a crisis. But smart leaders can seize the moment, use the disruption to intentionally implement better habits and systems that might have faced resistance before.
The London Underground fire example illustrates the design part.
It does. That tragedy was a huge crisis. It exposed massive safety failures. The response wasn't just immediate fixes. It led to a fundamental redesign of safety procedures, new regulations, and a cultural shift. Prioritizing safety leaders intentionally built new habits and values out of the crisis.
And they revisited Alcoa here too.
Yeah, because while O'Neill designed safety as a keystone habit initially, subsequent crises reinforced it. His unwavering focus on safety, even during tough times, cemented it into the culture. His leadership during crisis solidified the habit.
So leadership is critical in these moments, guiding which new habits take root.
Absolutely. How leaders respond during a crisis can shape an organization's habits and values for years to come. For you, reflecting on past crises, personal or professional, what habits changed? Were they accidental or intentional? How did leadership influence it?
Useful reflection. Now, Chapter 7 gets into something very current. Data and predicting consumer habits. Target is the big example here, right? Mentioned in the 1-Hour Guide by Anil Nethu.
Yes, how Target knows what you want before you do. It's all about predictive analytics. Target collects enormous amounts of data on what people buy.
Loyalty cards, credit cards, online tracking.
All of it. And they analyze it for patterns. The famous story is how they figured out a teenage girl was pregnant before her father did.
Ow.
By noticing, she started buying things correlated with early pregnancy, like unscented lotion, specific vitamin supplements, cotton balls, things pregnant women often buy together.
Wow. They connected those dots.
Exactly. Once their algorithm flagged her purchase history as matching the pregnant shopper profile, they started sending her targeted coupons for baby stuff.
Trying to create the habit of shopping at Target for baby supplies.
Precisely. The cue. Getting the targeted coupons, the routine, going to Target, the reward, getting needed baby items, maybe feeling prepared or getting a good deal. They're trying to insert themselves into that new life stage habit loop.
It's kind of amazing and a little creepy.
It definitely raises ethical questions about privacy versus personalization.
So for you listening, the takeaway is, be aware of the data trail you leave.
Yeah, think about your own shopping. Ever get an ad that feels spookily relevant? Companies are getting very good at predicting needs based on habit patterns revealed in data. Something to be mindful of.
Indeed. Okay, Chapter 8 zooms out again to look at habits in social movements. Saddleback Church and the Montgomery bus boycott. How do habits work there?
It argues that large movements often succeed by creating and sustaining collective habits among participants.
Let's take Saddleback Church first. How did habits play a role in its growth?
The idea is that Rick Warren successfully tapped into habit loops. The cue for people might be a feeling of seeking meaning or community. The routine became attending services, joining small groups, volunteering consistent activities, and the reward was that sense of belonging, purpose, connection.
Creating a strong community habit loop.
Right, which fueled the growth of the church and the purpose-driven movement.
And the Montgomery bus boycott. A very different context.
Very different, but habits were key there too. The cue was the injustice of segregation on the buses. The routine became the collective act of not riding the buses, finding alternative transportation, organizing carpools, a sustained shared behavior.
And the reward.
Empowerment, solidarity, progress towards the goal of desegregation. That shared routine, fueled by belief in the cause, became a powerful force for change.
So successful movements often rely on participants adopting and maintaining shared routines, shared habits.
Exactly. Whether it's weekly church attendance or daily acts of protest, these collective habits, driven by shared values and desired rewards, are often what sustain movements. For you, thinking about movements you know, what are the shared routines? What are the cues and rewards driving participation?
Fascinating perspective. Finally, Chapter 9 takes us into some deep territory. Neurology, free will, and responsibility for our habits. This is where the power of habit, the secret to mastering habits for business excellence 1-hour guide, gets quite philosophical.
It does. It tackles the tricky relationship between our brain's automatic habit-forming machinery and our sense of conscious choice. How responsible are we for actions that feel automatic?
The case of Eugene Pauly, patient HM, is mentioned. He had severe amnesia.
Yes, he couldn't form new conscious memories, but incredibly, he could still form new habits.
How does that work?
He learned new motor skills or how to navigate his house, even though he'd have no memory of learning it. He couldn't tell you how he knew the way to the kitchen, but he could walk there. It showed habit formation happens in a different part of the brain, one that doesn't require conscious awareness.
That really highlights the unconscious nature of many habits.
It does. And the chapter also brings in Angie Bachman's gambling addiction story.
Right, emphasizing the environmental factors.
Exactly. Her story shows how powerful environmental cues, the flashing lights of a casino, easy access to credit can trigger and sustain destructive habits, sometimes overwhelming conscious intentions. It's not just about willpower, context matters hugely.
So, given all this, the neurology, the environmental cues, where does that leave personal responsibility?
Well, it's complex. The book doesn't offer easy answers, but the implication isn't that we have no responsibility. Instead, understanding how habits work actually empowers us.
How so?
Because if we know about the habit loop, if we can identify our cues and rewards, if we know we can change the routine using the golden rule, that knowledge gives us agency. It gives us tools to intervene consciously in those automatic processes. As the 1-hour guide by Anil Nathu suggests, awareness is the first step towards change.
So understanding the science doesn't remove responsibility, it actually enables it more effectively.
That's a good way to put it. It shifts the focus from just trying harder to strategically redesigning our own habit loops.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground. From the basic habit loop and cravings,
To the golden rule, keystone habits, habits in business like Starbucks.
the role of crisis, consumer data, social movements, and even the neuroscience of free will. It's all interconnected.
It really is. The principles are consistent across all of these different levels. Understanding that cue routine reward structure is fundamental.
This deep dive into the power of habit, the secret to mastering habits for Business Excellence 1-Hour Guide, has been incredibly insightful.
Hopefully it gives you, our listener, a solid framework for thinking about your own habits and maybe making some positive changes. Remember to start by just observing those loops.
Thank you for joining us today. Buy the book at the 1-Hour Guide website for more business insights. And maybe a final thought for you listening. Reflecting on everything we've discussed, what's one keystone habit you could potentially focus on this week, either in your personal life or your work? What small change might create the biggest ripple?
Good question to end on. Thanks for tuning in.